Hey, greetings everybody. This is Kai from the Techno Funk Boy. So we're going to talk a little bit about Dragonlance now, and this is going to be an ongoing series as I'm actually DMing a campaign that's taking the original Dragonlance modules and translating them into 5th edition for my players, and so this is going to kind of be just a collection of my thoughts on how to do that. Definitely learning from my mistakes along the way, which we've already had several, and so please, watch these and learn from where I misstep. So you might see in my channel, I had actually a couple of these videos that were just very loosely put together, but as I went through the game, I really started thinking that this could be a very valuable a valuable resource, and I wanted to make it a little bit more formal. So this is how this is going to be structured. Today's episode is going to be on the characters themselves and what in the world to do with them, and we're going to get more into that, and it's going to make sense as to why I'm asking that question here. We're going to have some episodes that are just dealing with a kind of a larger question that doesn't actually pertain to any one point in the module. It's just in general, some ideas on what to do. That's going to kind of be like this one. The other ones you're actually going to be seeing with labels of chapters, and I'm going to take one chapter at a time as we go. Now we've already played through several chapters, so I'll be able to kind of front load some of these and get them out a little bit more quickly. But we're going to go through each chapter of the original modules and explain kind of what's going on in them and some ideas for the DM to put these into 5e. And that's what's going to go on with that. So some of you might be joining us today, and this is the way I got into it. Some of you might be joining us today because you read the Dragonlance novels, and you knew that there was some sort of campaign. You would kind of want to see what all of this was about. Now that was me. I read these novels actually before I ever played Dungeons and Dragons. My first game of Dungeons and Dragons was in college, and it was like a year after I read these books, and I never got to play the original modules. And so when we were trying to figure out a game to play as a group, I suggested this because it's something that I always wanted to do. Now, the original modules were written for first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, and this was an idea that Tracy and Laura Hickman came up with as they were driving across country to take a new job at TSR, and they were throwing around ideas, and this is the thing that came up. And so this campaign was published over several books along the way, and it combined into this single story. And the Dragonlance Chronicles novels were the novelization of that Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman wrote together. So this is, kind of the idea behind this is to have just this world-spanning adventure, because it's before this point, a lot of these adventures were just very centrally based. You're in Hamlet and you go to some stuff around Hamlet, but this was something that was much bigger, and it was also something that contained a lot more dragons, which for a game called Dungeons and Dragons are not all that common, and this game has a lot of them. A lot of them, and we'll go into all of them in all their awesome glory as we go. But this is something that they have not translated into 5th edition, and I really wish they would, because as I get more into it, the more I'm really liking these modules. They are one of the reasons we need to do this is because they are sometimes ridiculously flawed, but there's enough brilliance in them that I think they still warrant our attention. All right, so that's kind of what we're going to go into. So today I want to talk about the characters because if you have not seen the module, they have some pre-generated characters for you, and they are the characters from the books, and that is what they're kind of intending you to play with, and that's I feel like that was a lot more common in first edition than now, but it's always been one of my favorite parts in Dungeons and Dragons is making your own characters, and so we have to decide as DMs, and this is a point where you really should be having this conversation with your players. By the way, there really there really won't be any spoilers in this particular video, and so players, you should be fine watching this. We are going to go into the one thing that's a little bit of spoilers. We're going to go into the staff, but that's like on page 2 of the adventure, and so that this that you actually should run across this very very quickly, and so that's not going to be a major spoiler. So this is a conversation that you should have with your players. Do you want these pre-generated characters, or do you want to make your own? All right. Now, so I'm going to be talking a lot about how we translate this game that is made for these characters into our new characters, because that's the way we're doing it. And I think that a lot of players will want to do that unless they just really really loved the novels and they want to play as those particular characters, which I totally understand, and it is pretty cool. So it's the first thing you have to decide, and that's going to drive most of what happens next. These characters are made with first edition and in mind, and you'll notice that, like for example, Tanis is a fighter, and he's not a ranger. Now, at first I thought, okay, well, in first edition, you're a fighter, and you can like specialize as a paladin or a ranger if you have really good stats. And so I'm thinking, okay, clearly Tanis is a ranger. In the books, he's like the quintessential ranger. He's actually one of the reasons that I play a ranger in Dice and Dreary, which is the game that is podcasted. Aragorn and Tanis were like, just real inspirations for me. I love these characters. But he is listed as a fighter. So the first thing I thought, I was like, okay, well, he's just listing him as a fighter. But then you get to Riverwind, and Riverwind is listed as a ranger. So I was like, what's going on? Then I looked at his stats. Tanis doesn't qualify to be a ranger, which is hilarious to me. But this is the way first edition was. Is that you were a fighter if your stats were normal. If your stats were extraordinary, you could be a ranger or paladin. Now, so these are the requirements to be a paladin in first edition. Your strength had to be 13 or higher, intelligence 13 and higher, wisdom 14 or higher, and constitution 14 or higher. Tanis only meets one of these 4 requirements. So, yes, Riverwind is smarter than him, more wise than him, and with greater constitution than him. Riverwind's stats are actually kind of OP. He's got an 18/35 on strength, 16 in dex. I'm gonna flash these up. You can take a look at them. Yeah, his stats are crazy. Tanis is and like, look, these people are heroes, of course. All their stats are kind of crazy. I don't think that these were fairly rolled. Don't tell Tracy Hickman I said that. But Tanis is much more normal, and And so, yeah, that's one of the weird things about this game that that you find. Um, so we're gonna have to move all these people to fifth edition, and we can make some corrections as we go. Now, like, I mean, the rules about classes are much looser now. So, for goodness sakes, let's make Tannis a ranger. You know, um, uh, Riverwind probably should be a barbarian. A lot of the other ones can fit in quite nicely, but you can have some fun with this. It's like, okay, so these are the original archetypes. This is the way it was structured. It was structured then, but we have a lot more choices now. So, what do we want to do with it? How we have a lot more room to specialize and really kind of make these characters fill out these characters in a very very cool way. And so that could actually be a lot of fun. That could be like an activity that you can do with your players, especially because we're going to need to level them up a little bit. We're going to get to that. But this could be something that's like, okay, so all right, let's just say that you have a bunch of players that just really love the books, and you want to play. It's like, okay, so what what type, we have these options now in fifth edition. It's like, so what how do you see Riverwind? How do you see Gold Moons? How do you see Sturm? As these characters and develop them that way. I think it would be a lot of fun and very very cool. Like I said, we didn't go that way, but that is a very 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 cool idea. The second question is, where are we going to start them level wise? You'll notice I flashed some of the cards up a little bit previously, and you notice like all of these characters are very, very high. So Sturm is actually the highest leveled character I think it was level 7. And I'm sorry, Sturm and Karamon are both level 6. My apologies. A couple of level 4s. Raceland is the lowest level at level 3. Um, Everyone else is level 5. So we got 3 level 5s, a couple of level 4s, a level 3, and a couple of level 6s. So the we seem to be averaging out about 5. We're going to find that that might be a good place to start. That might be a good place to start. So we can do this in a couple of different ways. You could just start at level 5, or let's just say level 3 maybe. That seems to be a place that a lot of adventurers like to start, is level 3, and have a little bit more rapid leveling up front. Or we could just level everybody up to level about level 5, 4 or 5, and that would do fine. I can tell you, as a DMs, if you don't do this, and I'll tell you, I didn't. We started level 1. But if you don't do this, you're going to need to do some serious scaling in the first module, and we're going to get to those points. We're obviously we're not doing spoilers this time, so obviously we're going to have to talk about that later. But we're gonna need to do some scaling, and that's very doable. And we had a lot of fun doing it that way. The other option is, and I'll just tell you, the reason we started level 1 is because I had a couple of relatively new players in the group. One was a player that had not played at all, and I wanted her to have the whole experience of creating the character, starting at level 1, of leveling up early on, and being so squishy, so squishy at the beginning, and so there's going to be I'm gonna put in some ideas about leveling early on. If you want to make up or like find a introductory adventure somewhere that you can put prior to the first module, like just kind of a get to know you adventure that maybe levels them up to level 3, that might be worthwhile as well. Um, if if you don't start them at level 3, there's a quirk in Dragonlance of wizards taking the test, the big test, and picking their allegiances, picking their rogue color. And in the books, that happens at level 3. And actually, in the book, you as a magic user, you cannot level up to level 4 until you do that. So if you start at level 1, we have that to deal with. Now, I decided not to do the, stop them at level 3 and prevent them from getting to level 4 until we get to that test. Because there's an opportunity for testing that's not too far in the adventure, and it might be a good place to do that. But if everybody else is like level 5 or something, you don't want your magic user to just be stuck there and then take several levels right away. To me, that's just not going to work, and so we have bent the rules a little bit in my campaign to say, hey, once you kind of reach this level, you need to get over here as soon as possible. But we understand if you're trapped in a dungeon with a dragon, and so that's kind of how we are playing it, and that's one of the fun quirks about Dragonlance. The other fun quirk about Dragonlance is, there's no clerical magic for some time, and with all of the now options for different types of characters, you kind of have to figure out what that means. And my rule of thumb is, and this is not a spoiler. This is from the very beginning. The gods are gone, and so if the way you cast magic is based on your connection with one of the deities, then you ain't casting. The game does provide a way to alleviate that for a time, and so if you're a player out there, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to play cleric. Don't be afraid to play a character that's going to call upon the power of the god. I think that story pays off. But there are ways the game is going to help you in the meantime. And so we're gonna go more into that. But suffice it to say, if you're playing a character, if you're playing a cleric, just don't put any of those don't put any of those spells on your spell sheet yet. We're gonna get to that. So I drifted away a little bit, but the point was, you can use the original characters, and Gold Moon would be that cleric amongst the original characters. You can make your own. This is going to cause a little bit of work for the DM, because now we have to figure out who has that staff and why. So there's a few options here. Maybe your characters maybe that little pre-adventure was some fever dream of them facing crazy creatures and getting that staff. I wouldn't want, if you do that, I wouldn't want to give too much away there, and so I would shroud it in a lot of mystery and psychedelics, because that play that's where things happen, that plays into it soon. And so I wouldn't want to give too much away, but maybe that's an option. Maybe just part of the backstory is that you have it. I preferred to let the characters do their own backstory, and what I just did was I made Gold Moon and Riverwind NPCs, and so the player characters met up with these two, and are going to go with them. Um, the danger here is that I there are a few things that I think are worse in a game is when the PCs are supporting the NPC story. When you have when you're essentially playing a DM PC, the Dungeon Master player character, and the story is about that character, then that that to me is just is ridiculously boring. This should be the story of the player characters. And so, if we go that route, I'm going to give you some ideas when we get to that point on how to shift that focus from Goldmoon and Riverwind to the players where it should be. And so we will tackle that. But that's the way we did it. Is we just made them NPCs. Now, this raises the question. You can have cameo appearances or appearances from all the characters if you want to. And I haven't decided exactly who is part of this world. In my mind right now, it's only those two of the original companions of the lands. Um, but there's some potential there, especially uh, if the players have read the novels. That it might be fun. It might be fun just running across Flint at some point. It'd be pretty awesome. Now, of course, if they haven't read the novels, please tell them not to until you get to that point. It there are a lot of twists and turns, and the novels are pretty darn faithful to these modules, and so it kind of gives a lot away. Um, and so that's a lot to deal with. Um, it this is all kind of front loaded on some big decisions that's going to kind of steer your campaign in one direction or another right away. Whether you have these characters, or the original novel characters, or your own, and leveling and that sort of thing. And so DMs. It's like most of my transition work came up front in this kind of area. Is trying to figure this stuff out. There's a lot of really good questions came up that so like one character wanted to take Orcish as a language, and they're like, "Are there orcs in Kryn?" And I'm like, I don't remember any." And so at the time I looked it up, and I'm kind of blanking on the answer. I think the answer was no, there aren't. And so when we're dealing with like halflings, it's like, well, there's Kinder, and Kinder act in a particular way, and the player, if they want to play a Kinder, they by all means, that's a blast. Um, they they should they should be ready for that. We set up some rules by which we would play Kinders, and we're going to talk a little bit about Kinders in a separate video, but it turned out to be a lot of fun. We do have a Kinder in the party, and she's a blast, and as a Kinder should be. But good, for goodness sake, if somebody wants to play a Kinder, please make sure they know what they're doing, because Kinders can be the life of the party or the death of the party. You know what I mean? And so make sure that they're the life of the party. Um, and so, yeah, okay, so there's a lot more of this sort of stuff that we need to talk about as we go. But in the next video, we're actually going to dive right into chapter 1, because I'll intersperse these more overview episodes as we go. But I want to get into the text a little bit, and really let you take a look at the world and what we can do with it, and how we can make this a very, very, very cool experience for our players. So thank you so much for joining me on this. Please hit that like and subscribe button right down there. If you are into actual play podcast, I am a player character on Dice and Dreary, and I'm also composing the music for that. By the way, the music that you're listening to in the background, this is my arrangement of music that is in the DragonLance modules. There is sheet music in there, and if you are not musically inclined or you just don't feel like playing it yourself, there's a ton of stuff online of people performing this music, and you should check it out because it's one of those really cool details, just one of those really cool world building details, that this world has music, like specific music that they made for this world. I think it's just super cool. But I also do the music for Dice and Dreary podcast, and so please do check that out. But I really do appreciate you tuning in, and we will catch you next time. Thank you.